the Show Me NASCAR Podcast. I am with our usual host, Harry Loomis. Harry, hope you had a good weekend.
Yeah, it's been a pretty good one. I know you were enjoying the Rolex 24 pretty good bit.
All that fun stuff this weekend, and especially the Chiefs making to the Super Bowl. But we have a very special guest, Dustin Albino from Jayski.com. Dustin, welcome to the show. Great to have you, man.
Thanks for having me, Kaleb. I'm excited to talk some racing with you guys.
Heck yeah. Well, we got some news today. Just gonna jump in here. Well, first, actually, let's talk about Dustin's background. Dustin, how did you are currently working with Jayski right now? You're a digital content editor, if I read that right, and you also do some work for NASCAR.com. Tell us where you're from and how you became to where you are now, to one of the top journalists in NASCAR.
Yeah, so I don't know if it'll be on video, but I'm from Syracuse. Bleed orange. But yeah, so I don't know. Growing up, racing was always my thing. Like, I was kind of the odd kid that stood out in school because I'm from a small town and not many people, enjoy racing up here, at least not as much as I do or did back then. So always wanted to be a part of it and knew I didn't want to drive. So then you got to cover it, right? Or go on the team side or whatever. So I've had that dream since I was about 7, 8 years old, and it took a lot of work, and a lot of investment. But we're here now at Jayski with partnership with NASCAR. So that's where the NASCAR.com side of it comes in. So yeah, it's been a journey, but hard work pays off too.
How long have you been with Jayski now? A couple of years now, isn't it?
Yeah, this is my third year. I started January 1st of 2021. So we're going on 2.5 years almost that I've known that I'll be with, I would have been with Jayski, but yeah, super cool site. It fits me because it's a very old school site. I'm a very old school person. So it's the news is just right there. There's no working around everything. It's just right there in front of you, and it's a one-stop shop. Cup, Xfinity, trucks, right there.
That's awesome. Well, the news that we got today, we got a couple of breaking news, especially for this Monday, recording this on Monday, January 30th. Talking about NASCAR. NASCAR could sign NBC and Fox back, but Amazon could be a third member of the TV deal, reported by Adam Stern, Sports Business Journal. Harry, what are your thoughts on that? It's been rumored now that Fox and NBC has been happy with NASCAR and they're wanting to re-sign back. ESPN's kind of thrown their hat in the game with SRX. But now Amazon, a streaming service. What are your thoughts on that? And what do you think about it?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think kind of looking at it the past couple months, it seemed like Fox and NBC were probably the most likely candidates to come back, at least in some sort of capacity. Just everything you've been hearing, everyone was throwing out maybe ESPN, maybe Turner Sports, maybe CBS, but none of that just really seemed that likely. It doesn't seem like there was a lot going towards any of those directions. But Amazon was definitely surprised. Like, I know they've been talking about possibly getting some races streamed for a few years now when this contract came up. So I don't really know how the schedule would work. If it would be something like when they did the TNT Summer Series back around 2007 to 2014, just races here or there. But it's definitely interesting. But I'd be really curious to see kind of where the money lines up with all those networks.
What do you think, Dustin?
Yeah, I think Harry's pretty accurate there. I think, with Fox and NBC, I think they're both happy. I mean, Fox has been in the sport now for the last 2.5 decades, pretty much. I think there probably was a big push to get some kind of streaming aspect in it, just because that's the way the world's going. And Amazon probably makes sense. You look at the NFL this year and the Amazon Prime numbers. It got, I think, worse as the year went on, but the initial numbers, like week 1, I guess would have been week 2. I don't remember who played, but they had some big numbers that first week. So I think NASCAR probably saw that and wanted, saw some potential. So it wouldn't surprise me if the aspect of it, probably the Cup Series. I would think the Cup Series, but you'd think maybe they'd start off with Xfinity and trucks just to see how it goes. But yeah, I think there'll definitely be some kind of streaming service into the next deal.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that a streaming service is coming into the game. I am surprised of what, though. I honestly would have thought Peacock would have been, NASCAR's number one choice, just since that's an NBC brand.
It could be still, they could put some races out behind the paywall there.
Right. But, I mean, Amazon, that's great. Kind of like what you said, the NFL just joined this year with Thursday Night Football. But, that could be something new. Like, you're obviously going to lose some hardcore fans that just pay for cable and whatnot and don't really have the internet service. But at the same time, you have a really big chance of growing your audience, especially to the 18 to the 49 year old ranking, which NASCAR's been lacking in for the past couple of years now. So I think this is a good chance for NASCAR to kind of steam back into popularity just a little bit. I mean, at least get ahead of the curve there before everything just becomes streaming. But yeah, that's super cool, I think.
I think that's a good point too. In terms of, say it is Amazon or Peacock or whatever, like, while there are some people who just are old school and pay for cable, there's also a lot of people now that only pay for streaming too, because it's cheaper. So you have potential to grow it there. I'm interested to see how it works and what happens here in the next. I mean, it's got to be done pretty soon. The contract's coming up.
I know it, and who they're going to have announcing and whatnot if this becomes a reality. Who they'll have, how many races and whatnot, what races. I mean, it seems like both broadcast partners of Fox and NBC are happy with what races they have. It'll be interesting to see what races get taken away from them. Other news from our friend Adam Stern from the Sports Business Journal. Starting in 2025, teams are asking NASCAR for about $16 to $18 million in league revenue that can be earned per car per year for top performers, roughly doubled the current amount. Teams also want to make a charter system permanent. I'm just reading straight off Adam Stern's tweet there. Great guy there. Yeah, this is something that, especially starting this year, about teams rumbling that they want more revenue, and now I think Jeff Gluck pointed out, now we have an actual ballpark of what they're asking for. One thing that kind of surprises me is, not really surprises me, but it's a charter system. I mean, that's one thing that at first, when it first came out, I wasn't a big fan of. I like the open cars and whatnot, but now seeing especially what it did with Trackhouse and Chip Ganassi Racing, how it's elevated, trying to get into this sport, I obviously think it's a good thing now. So teams are wanting that now. Harry, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way as you. It didn't seem 100% necessary to me, especially when it came out, I think, 2016. But now it definitely seems like a really good asset for those teams to have, just the security of knowing that they're going to start every race and the minimum funding they're going to get. So I can understand why they're asking for more money on top of that. And my biggest fear always was that there weren't enough charters and that new teams weren't going to be able to get in. But we've seen colleagues been able to get 2. We saw with Trackhouse that Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan have gotten 2 charters. Mm-hmm. I think money talks at the end of the day, and there's not as many issues getting those as there once was. And even now, with most of the charters being fairly competitive, I still think there's opportunities for some shifting here and there. Like, say, a team like maybe Stewart Haas Racing, they got Kevin Harvick out the door, they've got Eric Almirola, doesn't have many years left. Who knows if maybe 4 cars is the way to go. Maybe they're going to downsize to 3 cars. That's another charter that can open up. Maybe a guy like, I don't know, maybe a guy like Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski want a new charter, and they can start another competitive team that way. So I think the money's always going to be there, and I think it's proving more and more to be a good asset for the teams to have.
I think you hit on a key point there, Harry, and security, and I think it is a good thing, for them to be guaranteed in and all that. But I think that's a supply and demand issue, right? Like, there's 36 of them, and the demand is pretty high behind the scenes. So when you're only limiting it to 36, and you have, like at one point, Colleague wanted to come in, they got to. Justin Marks got to, because he bought a race team, like an existing race team. So it's just, and they're so high right now because the demand is very high and the supply is so low. So I don't know. I think it's a good thing it sticks around. As far as the other point that Adam brought up, as far as pretty much doubling their profit right now with the teams, like that's a big ask. But at least we know now that there is a ballpark number, like Jeff Gluck said. So because I mean, money does talk at the end of the way. Harry's right. Yeah.
Just a crazy question. We all agree that, do you guys think that NASCAR maybe extends to 43 cars here in the next couple of years with how many teams are wanting to enter the sport? I mean, Dale Jr., who's been the ambassador for NASCAR for so many years now, really, he's been trying to get in, but he says with the prices now, no. So do you think NASCAR extends the charter at all to 43?
I don't know. I think I think they want to have the strongest field possible, right? So if you have 36 good teams, like that's a good thing to have. And then the open cars are what they are. But we see like this year with the 500 right now, there's 5 open cars, potentially 6 or 7, and and that's going to make the duels interesting again. And the last few years, when was it? 2 years ago, I think there was 40 cars. Like nobody went home. So that just that puts the new aspect on the duels or what it was in the past. But yeah, I don't know. As far as going to 40 or 43 chartered teams, maybe. But then you've got to think about like how much does that. For instance, and they talked about this on the download, but with Junior and Denny, like how much would Junior have to pay for an entry fee just to get in? That's reasonable that Denny had to pay. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy how much these charters are expensive. Kind of like what you were saying. The supply is low and demand is high. It's just it's crazy. Harry, unless you have anything other, sorry, I felt like I was excluding you out of that. But if you have anything to add, continue forward.
No, yeah, to be honest, I don't see the field size or the charters increasing anytime soon. The biggest thing is because I know we have a lot of open cars for the 500, but looking back at last year, I think there were maybe 2 cars at D&Q for the 500. Every other race, I don't think we had more than 38, 39 cars for a road course. So at that point, until, the guys like Dale Jr., other guys that want to field cars, start running them openly just to kind of get their foot in the water, I don't see any need to increase it anytime soon.
I think that's a good point too, Harry. But yeah, because if there's only, I think you're right. I think the only race that had 40 cars last year was the 500 at 42, so only 2 went home. They're from the same team, MBM, and to my knowledge, off the top of my head, I don't think they ran another race the rest of the year. And that was because they didn't get the money from Daytona because they were betting on them getting into the race to use for the rest of the year. So that doesn't happen, then kind of out of luck. But yeah, I mean, there's so many people and owners and celebrities that want to get in, but the supply is really low right now.
Absolutely. Speaking of Daytona, Rolex 24 Hours at Daytona happened this weekend. Dustin, you texted me. You did not watch that this weekend. I assume your schedule was busy there. Harry, did you watch it? If so, what do you think? And I don't know.
I got to be honest, I did not catch a whole lot of that.
This one, Kaleb.
Yeah,
So I'll be honest. I try to tune in for a little bit of the 24 every year. This year, didn't have the time, like you said, Kaleb. The schedule just busy, whatever. There wasn't also a lot of NASCAR aspect this year to it. Like, the only one running was Austin Cindric.
Right.
So I don't know. I feel like if you get, and it is cool how they have different stars from different sides of racing. Whether it's Formula One, IndyCar, whatever. But the sports car, and I've seen this, like the popularity of it is growing throughout the United States. So it's just interesting that there's only one NASCAR guy this year.
I was about to say, it's really interesting for that, especially with this new car. I mean, there's been people saying that it drives more like an Australian supercar or whatever, something other than a NASCAR stock car. So it is kind of weird seeing only Austin Cindric. I think he was running the LMP2 class. I think he finished 12th, I believe. That was that class that had that amazing last lap finish to it.
I saw the finish.
Yes.
It was a good finish.
But I mean,
it's crazy that after 24 hours it comes down to the last straightaway.
Oh, I know it. IMSA is not something I follow 100%. I'll catch the 24 hours at Daytona, but something about running 24 hours at Daytona is super cool to me, and it kind of got me wondering, do you think with this next-gen car, and especially the Garage 56 that we're getting ready to talk about here in a little bit, do you think it's possible that maybe NASCAR dips its toe into IMSA racing just a little bit, maybe having an exhibition class, kind of like what they're going to do at Le Mans later this year, maybe at Daytona have a stock car class?
Are we talking about the 24, like if NASCAR would have a class in the 24?
Yeah, just, some maybe 4 or 5 cars or whatever, have some cup drivers in there, because I feel like this...
I think the Le Mans is a test for that, maybe. I mean, it's interesting that they're doing, with the new car, like you said, drives like a sports car, so I think this is a starting point, and then who knows what could happen in the future.
Yeah. What about you, Harry?
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how that Garage 56 entry does do at Le Mans, but there's been enough driver interest to begin with. Chip Ganassi always had some NASCAR guys in when he was still running a team, so I definitely don't think it's an absolute no, but it'd be I think this is, like Dustin said, a real trial run to see kind of where the interest is and how they do.
Right. Speaking of Garage 56, the drivers were announced for that. I'm trying to pull that up real quick. I do know Jimmy Johnson was a part of that, but the Garage 56, the 4 drivers announced for that.
Mike Rockefeller.
Yes.
Yes, it's a pretty stacked class.
Yes.
Drivers. Obviously, Jimmy Johnson, 7-time champion in the Cup Series. Jenson Button, the 09 F1 World Champion, and Mike Rockenfeller. I mean, he's got a lineage of road course history that's amazing too. So they're definitely not putting any slouches in that car. And I think you want to make a statement if you're going to have it as a test trial for the future.
Oh, 100%. I am excited to see what this Garage 56 can do for the future of NASCAR. I mean, obviously it's a big honor for the people at Le Mans to allow NASCAR to have a Garage 56 entry where it's not really competing. It's not competing at all. It's just running out there to run out there, just testing some things, especially with this new next-gen car. But it's going to be cool to see, Jimmy Johnson, 7-time champion, run at Le Mans, along with them other guys. It's going to be really cool. Let's see. This came from Jayski this morning, so Dustin, you might know a little bit more about it. But Toyota says it's looking to add more teams to 2024. Who do you think moves to Toyota if they do? And yeah, all that fun stuff.
That's a tough one. I don't know who. I did post this on Jayski this morning. And it's a report from NBC Sports that they talked to David Wilson of Toyota over the weekend in Daytona. I don't know if there's any teams right now that stick out. You could always see like a middle of the pack, like Chevrolet team, because there are so many of them. Like maybe make the hop over, maybe like an RCR. I don't think per se that would be the team, but that's just an example.
Right.
That could potentially do it, or like a Legacy Motor Club. Like who knows? I don't know if there's one team that necessarily sticks out right now, but this is something that Toyota probably needs because there's only 6 cars in the Cup program. So yeah, we'll have to. It'll be a big talking point throughout the year.
Harry, what do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. We've been hearing for years and years that there's rumors about more teams going to Toyota just because, like we said, there are so few entries. And my question is, I don't know how much development systems come into play, especially now that they lost KVM, but really all they have there is a Tricon Garage and Joe Gibbs and Sam Hunt's Xfinity Series teams. So I don't know if that would play a factor. I know Stuart Haas was rumored to go to Dodge when they were in heavy negotiations about possibly being the 4th manufacturer. I know Tony is, from what I hear, Tony still has some pretty bad taste towards Ford for not letting them sign Kyle Larson because Tony was so big on that back when he was suspended. I don't know if that grudge is still there and he's looking to continue moving teams, but if so, that would be a huge gift for them. I don't know how likely that is to get a 4-car operation there. I think if you're going to get anybody, maybe, like Dustin said, a mid-pack team, maybe someone like a JTG, Doherty Racing,
right.
Maybe even maybe like a Spire Motorsports or something like that that's still trying to develop, and even though they have the Hendrick Alliance, that could be kind of the area that they're looking to get.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I don't think we'll really know, and Dave Wilson did say that they're talking to some teams, and there's some valuable suitors out there, but I think as the year goes on, and if this is something they really want, which is something they really need, I think, is more cars in the wagon, I guess, over there, because there's only 6 of them. And it'll be, I guess 7 part-time with the 67 this year with Travis Pastrana. But yeah, we'll have to see. It'll be a good storyline all year long.
100%. And this weekend, we actually do return to NASCAR Cup Series racing. The Busch Light Clash at the Coliseum is this weekend at the LA Memorial Coliseum. Who do you guys think are going to be some top contenders there? Obviously, practice doesn't start until Saturday there. Who do you guys think will win? Do you like the Clash at the Coliseum? And do you think NASCAR returns to LA next year?
You go first, Harry.
So whether or not, first off, my thoughts on it, I like racing and I like short track racing, so I like it more. I think they moved it to under the lights this year. I think that's a good move. It seemed kind of weird to have it kind of mid-afternoon in LA last year. So first things first, I like that. But one of my favorite races of the year was the old style Bud Shootout Saturday night Daytona, just because big hype up to the season. Nothing could beat that. And I understand now with the Super Bowl being the week before the 500, that wouldn't work the same way. So I understand that. It doesn't put the exact same amount of excitement in me, especially since we have 2 weeks before the 500 still when the Clash runs. But I do like it. I think it was a pretty good show last year, and I think it's going to be a little bit better this year just because we know a little bit what to expect. In terms of picking a winner, I don't really know. Tyler Reddick was really competitive last year. Kyle Busch was competitive last year. I think it's going to be a guy that's not switching rides. I don't really see someone first time in their new car winning like Neil G did. I think it's going to be someone like a Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott will probably be guys to beat today or on Sunday.
See, I'm in a different boat than you on this one because, with the Daytona Clash back in the day, the Budweiser Shootout, it ran its course. And it was just the last couple of years was just a wreck fest. And it just put the teams behind, really. So I think, and this is another way of bringing it to a city in LA, right in the heart of LA, where you can grow the audience. Like last year, the report was there's 70% of fans in attendance were new NASCAR fans for the first time. So I think that's a good way. Hopefully that's similar. The numbers probably won't be as high a second year around, but you're still getting the product just like the Chicago Street Course later in the year to the people. You're bringing it right to them. As far as winners, I think Reddick's a good choice, even though he is switching teams. Last year I picked Logano and he won. And Joey's just so good at adapting to change on the go. He won the championship in the first year in the next gen car. So I think it'll be tough to beat him, but I'll go Reddick.
Yeah, talking about winners, it's hard to go against Logano, who did win last year. But I'm going to go with Harry. I think it's going to be someone that's been in the ride, from last year. I think it's going to be someone kind of like what you said, an Elliott or a Bowman or someone like that in that matter. Talking about LA Clash, at first I was a little skeptical on it because I'm one of the rare people that love restrictor plate racing. I love the aspect of it, and I really loved the Clash whenever back in its prime, in the mid to late 2000s, early 2010s when it was running at Daytona under the lights. But these last couple of years, I think especially when they moved it to the daytime and especially 2020, I actually didn't watch that race. I was on a school field trip that day, but I do remember seeing all Twitter and whatnot and just seeing all the wreck cars and everything. I think it's ran its course on the oval. I was excited about the road course, but obviously the road course did not pan out to what.
You don't think so? Because I thought going into it that the road course was going to be something new, obviously, and I thought it was just going to be very spread out, and it was. But then you had Blaney and Chase take each other on the last lap, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. They're running on the road course. Kyle Busch gets by for the win. But I do like it on an oval,
right?
For a season opener with an exhibition race. And as far as if it stays in LA, I mean, this is something you could move around potentially, but it's kind of hard to say because only certain, select few stadiums in the United States could really pull this off, I feel like, because the LA Coliseum is an Olympic-sized stadium. So, I don't know if it could rotate. It'd be cool, especially for the teams, going all the way out to LA. That's a ton of money to get out there.
Yes.
If you could run it somewhere on the East Coast, I think that would be probably beneficial for them.
Right, and I was excited at first when they announced for the road course, but I think also part of it that I didn't like was the fact that in 2021 we had 7 or 8 road courses that year. So I think that kind of made me not be a fan of it as much. As for
it's also a COVID year though too, so they just had to
right
race on essentially.
Yes.
They didn't want to have to go from one place to another in a quick spurt of time.
Right, and that's totally understandable for the predicament that NASCAR was in whenever we couldn't race at LA at that point. But yeah, I do like LA. I do like the LA Memorial Clash at the Coliseum. Do I think it returns next year? I really don't know. There was a rumor. Jeff Gluck was telling me this at Texas whenever I was there, along with Bob Pockers. But there was a rumor at one point that NASCAR was actually thinking about changing it in 2022 or maybe 23 to somewhere different. Maybe Jeff went as far to say, on one of them U.S. Army boats or whatever that's out in the air carriers and whatnot. I heard something about that. I don't know how true that was, but there was rumor of that. But I honestly would like, this is a chance for NASCAR. Stadium racing is something they just figured out with LA. This is a big chance for NASCAR to go into places they've never been before. Places like Denver, they got other big cities, like you said, on the East Coast. But this also gives a chance to go overseas, I think. Now, do I think they go overseas right away in 23 or 24? I'm sorry. No, I don't think so. But I think it does give us that opportunity in the future to test. Maybe go to Wimbledon in London or whatnot. Go overseas and show what NASCAR is all about.
it definitely opens it up because you're bringing, like I mentioned earlier, the party to the people essentially. Is like Austin Cindric put it to me last year, and that's a bonus when you can do that because you don't have to build this massive layout of a track and have all this property, and you can only have it in a quarter of a month.
My biggest fear is, you can invite people to the party, but they don't have to attend. Like 2 years in a row in LA, if it's not a racing market, it's not a racing market. So if, last year had a really good turnout with 70%, but it was kind of a rare commodity. If you make it a regular thing, it's less desirable. So that's why I'm kind of hesitant towards having it. I was hesitant towards having it a second year. I'm really curious to see what the turnout is, and if it's not ideal, I think you start looking around and see where you can move it to next year.
And what we also should think about too is this is the last year the Fontana being the 2 mile layout, and then next year it's going to be condensed into a short track. So having another short track like an hour apart in the same market essentially like that might be something where NASCAR moves it for next year.
Right. And final thing I got on my notes, guys, just kind of talking about 2023. What's your biggest prediction for 2023 in NASCAR? It doesn't have to be just in Cup Series. My biggest prediction, I think it's going to be a great year for NASCAR. I think we're going to see more attendance and whatnot as we finally break away from COVID, even though we didn't have to deal with that much last year. I do think, we do figure out who our TV partners are, obviously, in the fall. I do think it's going to be kind of towards that Amazon market just because what's happening with the NFL. But I think it's going to be a great year for NASCAR with fans finally getting engaged, and we're going to have some sellouts and whatnot. So, yeah, that's my prediction. What about you, Harry?
I'm going to go more on the track route. I think my big prediction is Brad Keselowski, a guy that had a really rough year last year. RFK was starting to turn around at the end of the year. Chris Buescher got away. I think we're going to see Brad Keselowski back in victory lane and in the playoffs. I think it's going to be – I predicted them making the playoffs last year. Didn't go well. I think they're much more prepared for a good year this year.
I'm going to go on the track too, and if you look at it, there's like 20, I could pull out like 23, 24 different teams that could make the playoffs this year. That's a good problem to have. I don't think necessarily we're going to have the 19 different winners or the 16 in the regular season, including Kurt Busch last year. I do think the big teams are going to probably not run that kingdom per se, but they'll be the ones in charge again as this new cars evolved. But I think Brad's a good choice. I also think Kyle Busch, like last year, he had for Kyle Busch standards, bad year. I mean, it's the fewest top fives he's ever had in a single season. And he's going to a team now that won 3 races last year. RCR, I think, overperformed last year as well. So I think he's going to get back on his winning ways to I'll say 3 wins on the year.
There you go. And Dustin, while we have you on here, there's obviously going to be some listeners who are in school right now or wherever they are in life. But talk about, especially in this day and age where kind of the newspaper business is going out and whatnot, everything's switching to online. How does someone it was kind of like us, who were kind of the weird kids in high school that only liked racing, how does someone like that make it to the top, to where they are now, where you are now? We're working, I assume, full-time at Jayski. I don't know how many races you go to a year. I know I saw you at Kansas this fall, but how does someone go from being just a high school student, just loving NASCAR, to making it to the top, working as a beat reporter?
It's certainly a grind, but I think what's good about NASCAR is like they allow the smaller outlets to cover the sport as well. So if you can get with a startup company or one that's been around, like Speedway Digest,
yes,
that's who I started with. I know that's who you're with, Kaleb. If you can start with someone like that, get your just name out there, get a byline, and just be truthful in your reporting, then that's an entry. And then from there, you just try to find any opportunity that you can. I told you this at Kansas, but it's super hard right now. It took me, I first started in 2015, and I didn't get a full-time job until 21. So if you look at it, that's 7 years pretty much. Actually, it was the end of 14 I started. So with Speedway Digest, so it's definitely difficult. It's a tough career path, but definitely go to school. I would say get at least a basic education. But anything helps really. And there's people who make it without one too in our field. I know Zach Cerniolo, he's with NASCAR.com now. He started with the Pocono Record. He's a good friend of mine. He originally, when he got his Pocono job, it was a beat reporter job it was like a county paper per se, like a town paper. And he didn't at the time have an education, so he got some advice from like Jeff Gluck and some of the other people that worked in the NASCAR beat, because this is what he wanted to do, and they told him to go to school and just get a basic education, because it's going to pay off in the long run, and it has for him, and it has for a lot of people. So yeah, it's definitely tough, and you got to put in the commitment and the time, money, probably a big investment. So and there's no guarantee of it working either. Or you could find an opportunity that you just, timing is not everything, I don't think, but it's a lot. Mm-hmm. So if the right opportunity comes up, just jump on it, and hopefully it all pans out.
What do you think the future of motorsports journalism is for the next 10, 15 years? I mean, obviously it's changed just in the past 10 years of what it is now.
It has. I mean, I think you're starting to see more people show back up to the track, which is a good thing. NASCAR's had a lot of good years in a row now. It keeps getting up. The viewership was up 4% last year. I believe it was 4%. And so, I mean, that's more people, more outlets, bigger outlets. Seems like they want to start covering the sport again, like your like the Today Show even. Like they had some segments on NASCAR last year. Jimmy Johnson's on it quite often, relative to the other drivers. So as far as where it goes, I don't know. It's so hard to predict. I do think there's going to start being jobs coming back around with with the next contract deal. You never know if there is an Amazon. They're going to need some employees. So whether they pick people from the outside or from the inside, who knows? But there'll definitely be some opportunities, I think, here coming up.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, Harry, do you got anything, last final words? I got to wrap it up here. I got about 4 minutes on my free Zoom.
I think that was about all we had to say. Dustin, all I got to say is I really appreciate you coming on, man. That was really cool.
Anytime. It's good seeing you guys at the track. I enjoyed talking to you at Kansas last fall.
Yeah, sounds good. And Dustin, if you're going to Daytona, hopefully I'll be getting my credential notice here in just a little bit, and hopefully we'll catch up there. Dustin Albino, thank you very much for joining the show. Thank you guys for listening to the Show Me NASCAR podcast. Expect this to come out either Tuesday or Wednesday, but yeah, thank you guys. Do appreciate it.